So let's do some player appraisal and make some selections for England v South Africa, Ireland, Argentina and Wales, Australia. I'm going to leave Scotland alone for now because they're playing Portugal. They might make a lot of changes. I'm just not sure, so that's a bit too tricky to discuss. And if you think you can predict any of the starting lineups for England, Wales, Ireland and Scotland, you could win Six Nations tickets every week with my starting lineup. If you want to get involved, use the code RugbyAN1 when you register. And then what you have to do is go from 1 to 15 and get exactly what the national coaches announce. If you get it spot on, then you go into the draw for those Six Nations tickets. There's a bit of an art to this. You've got to wait to see if any injuries happen. You don't want to be too late though, because once they've announced, obviously the game shuts. If you want to play it, get involved, RugbyAN1, and let me know how you do. So let's get into this England team, make a bit of an appraisal and make a selection for South Africa. Let's start from the back. George Furbank. He's been quite quiet. He was really good in the summer. Hasn't really had too much in attack in this series. He's been defending. They've been trying to get this new system right. He's made a few mistakes. So a bit quiet in attack. Is he under threat? Maybe. Maybe they go back to Stewart. Is Marcus Smith an option at 15? I would stick with him. He was really good in the summer. I think he will come good. But yeah, definitely a bit quiet. Now, we know that Emmanuel Fawubusu is out of the South Africa game. Roebuck's been called back in. I think it's a straight swap, slight home in. He looked good against Australia. Very sharp. So I think that's fairly straightforward. So let's talk about the centres. Steve Borthwick made a switcheroo in attack. It was all right. It worked pretty well. And they switched back in defence. Ollie Lawrence has had two good games, very powerful, good tackling, although right at the end there they mucked up between him and Ford, that pop pass and Kellaway scores, potentially a match-losing moment, and that can be his Achilles heel, hitting those short lines and balls bouncing off him. We've seen it in the Premiership and it happened here. Let's talk Henry Slade. I've had both points of views in the comments, plenty saying his time has gone, others saying he's a class act. What I would say is, he is a class act, as in he knows where he needs to be. He's playing the defensive system fairly well. I think they like him because he's getting this defensive system right. He's a ball player. He's a distributor. The problem is he's not that quick. He's not that strong. He's not a big tackler. And compared to all those other centres out there, he's just a bit down the bottom of the pile. So it just limits you. As good a player as he is, skill-wise, position-wise, you're just not getting an awful lot bang for your buck. So in my opinion, I think you need to try something new, something younger, and give it some time. For me, that would be Ollie Lawrence 12 and then Tommy Freeman 13. It's not ideal playing Lawrence 12, but I don't think we've got any other 12s in the squad at the moment to do a good job. So I think Lawrence the power at 12 and then the bigger, quicker Freeman at 13 and give them some time. Yes, you lose some ball playing, but I think it's worth going forward to get a higher ceiling to our team. That's what you've got to do. Then, of course, you have to replace Tommy Freeman on one wing. So I think you put in the tall Roebuck for equally good high ball work. Marcus Smith has been the only player that's making things happen. Against Australia, it was a one-man show at times. He's not perfect, no player is, but goodness me, he has to be in the team somewhere. And so at 10, I think he absolutely starts at 10 still. Ben Spencer, great skills, really quick pass, very physically solid, great kick as we know. Is he executing the game plan? Is that why he's not looking as exciting as maybe he could be? We're definitely missing Alex Mitchell, those little breaks, those snipes. I think maybe you stick with Spencer. Randall had a decent impact against Australia, so I'd keep him going. But yeah, it's not ideal, but I think Spencer, if you let him open up a bit, maybe it gets a bit more exciting, but he stays. The front row has been scrummaging well. Ellis Genge, unfortunately, has had two big mistakes, though, in each of the games. Two defensive errors in the first one, then two bad missed passes in the second one. So they were costly, to be honest, but the scrummaging is good, and Will Stewart, he has been probably the standout player, I'd say. Certainly front row-wise, a bit of an improvement from him. Big scrummaging, the best we've seen him, and we are short in tight heads and we needed him to step up, and fair play, he's done it. Hooker-wise, Jamie George. He does Jamie George things, which is doing everything pretty well, but he's not athletically very quick, very powerful. He's very much down on what other hookers are, so again, you're limiting yourself, but goodness me, it's a tricky one. Do you start someone else? At this point, he is the captain. Probably not. I would make a change on the bench, though. I bring Theo Dan back because I didn't see the impact that Cowan Dickey does, apart from going for his no arms tackles into the ankles the first play he had, which scares the hell out of me. Their second rows are very solid. They're both very strong. Together as a pairing, I'm not 100% sold because they are quite slow together, but I think we don't have Chesham. Stick with them. Atoje Martin, they're both performing well individually. Just as a pair, not too sure because Cunningham South isn't the most agile. Those three as a pair, not very agile, but Cunningham South is Mr. Power, Mr. Bust the line, big tackle, so he definitely stays in. Tom Curry is out concussed, and there were some complaints about him being left too long on his back, knocked out cold, could have swallowed his tongue. So that's where you need players really reacting and putting them on the side and getting recovery position and all that sort of thing. But that's a different discussion. And talking Ben Earl, he's still making lots of breaks and busts in attack. Probably not his tidiest 2 games, not his best 2 games, but you need him in the team. How do you change it up? Well, I think you know where I'm going with this. Ted Hill's been called back into the squad, and I would start him. I think he's absolutely blockbuster. He gets more pace into that back row. We need a bit of pace in this pack anyway. So Earl to 7. Let's see how it goes at 7. Ted Hill at 8, which he has played plenty before. Keeping China Cunningham South at 6. I like the look of that back row. Then onto the bench, I think maybe you do bring Underhill on. That stopping power would help. And I think maybe a 6-2 split is warranted here to deal with South Africa's forwards. And with Harry Randall, I'd have Finn Smith as the 2 backs. I think it's fair to say we haven't seen Ford have a positive effect on both games he's come on, so I think it's fine to start Finn Smith, who is the next fly half anyway, so sticking with the Smiths, that's the way to go for me. Then you'd have Ben Earl as emergency centre cover and Marcus Smith as 15 cover. So I think that's the way I'd want to go for this game against South Africa. Let me know what you would do. Then onto the Welsh team. They face Fiji. They're going on to face Australia. They want to win. They're desperate for a win. Let's go through this team. Cameron Winnett at 15 does everything perfect. The problem is he's absolutely tiny. I mean, in the game, he made great decisions, great passes, great kicks. Is he a bit too small? I don't know. It depends on the balance of the backline, and the backline started off very balanced because we had Mason Grady on one wing looking incredibly powerful and threatening until, of course, he went off. Then there seems to be some sort of balls up that happened where Costello wasn't meant to come on. It was meant to be Bevan. And indeed, Costello trotted on in the back 3 and looked petrified, like, what am I doing here? Completely out of place. So that was a massive coaching error. Plus the 6-2 split looked a big problem because they didn't have cover for Grady. It was left with Max Llewellyn, who was punching up pretty well, but it was just him. The rest were very small. Thomas, Blair Murray, they're both very small. Thomas Williams just got flung aside by Tuasova. Gareth Anscombe has solid skills but offers little else, so it was very much a problem when Grady went off. The front row of Thomas, Lake and Griffin I think is going nowhere. They did pretty well. Dewey Lake especially looked incredibly explosive early on. Did look a bit gas later though. Let me know if you thought the same. The Will Rowlands, Adam Beard, second row were very technical, but God, they're painfully slow, especially for that Muntz try where he just sauntered through the gap and they couldn't shut it. But I quite like Plumtree. I like the look of him physically, almost a perfect 6. He's looking very athletic. Rafael was okay, but I think the pack could do with Morgan's extra carrying. And Wainwright was decent, if not outstanding. The front row coming on, I was worried about, and it was pretty meh. Ryan Elias with that horrible knock-on to finish on. I don't really see what's particularly special about Hazarati. I'm not 100% sure where you go with that one. Maybe you bring Evan Lloyd in to give him a go. Henry Thomas for a bit of extra scrummaging and see how that works out. So we gave Blair Murray a go. Wasn't fully convinced. I think it's worth giving Dyer a chance to have a shot back. So Rio Dyer back in. I want to make that second row pairing having some pace in it. So Schwinzer starts and Beard drops to the bench, and then a change up in those front row replacements. On the bench, I would change it. I would actually stick to a 6-2 split if you manage it better, if you have more appropriate players. And I think having Eddie James at 23 means you have a big replacement, centre, maybe wing. No need for Costello because you've got Thomas there anyway. So I think it's better cover. You have a bit more size. Then onto the Irish team. They just didn't get going at all. They got slowed up by New Zealand. They gave away more than twice as many penalties. There's always discussion over whether refs were right or wrong, but that's what happened. The players, a lot of them had off days. They were quite quiet. You could definitely say just give them all another go because it was a one-off, but a sort of performance like that, you also need to have a bit of a reaction to say it's not good enough. So no, let me go through these players. Keenan, again, pretty perfect. Technically, one amazing covered tackle, but attacking-wise, no real shots. Hansen seemed to be feeling his way back in, which kind of makes sense. Ringrose was defending well, but we didn't see him in attack. Aki didn't have too much of an impact. We saw James Lowe with some massive punts off his left foot. They're impressive, but again, no particular running highlights. The fly halves had a really bad day. Crowley couldn't get the attack going. That was a team thing. And then when Frawley came on, everything he touched went completely wrong. Gibson Park wasn't his normal self, did some amazing stuff like a covered tackle, but also plenty of bungled skills, which is not normal for him. Porter, I thought, had a really good game, looked strong, looked hungry. Kelleher, the line-out struggled, definitely looked short of match fitness, but you could play him again and expect him to be better. Finlay Bealham, a bit tough on him. He had to come back on when Tom O'Toole got concussed, so he was pretty shot by then, I think, which didn't help. Joe McCarthy was big and physical. James Ryan was a tackling machine, but not much in attack. Tyburn couldn't get his turnovers going. Van der Fleer, powerful finish for his try, good tackling. And Doris, a normal Doris performance, pretty decent, but a bucket of tackling and not too much attacking. So would I make many changes? Also on the bench, I should say, in Henderson came on and made an absolute bucket load of mistakes. That was a problem. Omani was pretty decent coming on. Didn't see much of the others, Murray or Osborne. So largely, I think you give these established players another chance to show that it was a one-off, but also there can't be no consequences for that sort of performance. So I think Tyburn goes into the second row to speed it up a bit. Peter Omani into 6 because he looked, again, good impact off the bench. Missing Ryan Baird on the bench, I think, was a massive problem in that first game because he's just so good. He's just a ridiculous talent. So he comes onto the bench. Henderson drops out of the 23 completely and Ryan to the bench. Something has to give at fly half. Prendergast comes in on the bench for Frawley. You've got to give him a chance at some point. I think now is a decent time to do it. Frawley has no right to be in there. He hasn't got a huge amount of evidence behind him. So I think that pretty much is how it goes. The same backline goes again. But on the bench, I think I would have Craig Casey. I think he has more of an impact than Murray from 9. So that would be my team to take on Argentina. Anyway, guys, let me know what your teams would be for those nations. And if you want to play my starting lineup, get involved. And when you register, put in RugbyAnd1 and you could win 6 Nations tickets. Anyway, subscribe, like, that would be amazing. And I'll catch you next time.